Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going deep on a paper that's been making waves.
Oh, yeah.
It's called Scenarios for the Transition to AGI.
Okay.
It's from the National Bureau of Economic Research,
Interesting.
published in March of this year.
This year.
Yeah, this year.
Okay.
And it tackles the big question. What happens to the economy when AI can do pretty much any job a human can? You know, even reading the abstract gave me chills.
It's definitely thought-provoking. Kornick and Sue, the authors, don't shy away from the big implications of artificial general intelligence, or AGI.
Right.
They use some pretty sophisticated economic modeling
Oh, wow.
to explore a bunch of different scenarios, and the results are, well, let's just say they'll make you think twice about your career choices.
Okay, so before we dive into those scenarios, let's make sure we're all on the same page.
Sure.
The paper uses this term compute a lot. What exactly does that mean in this context?
It's basically a way to measure how complex a task is for a computer to perform. Think of it like this. Adding two numbers together requires very little compute.
Okay.
Writing a symphony or designing a skyscraper, that's a whole lot of compute.
Wow, yeah.
The more compute a task needs, the harder it is for AI to master.
Got it. So as computing power grows, AI can take on more and more complex tasks.
Right.
But what happens when it can theoretically do everything? That's where the concept of bounded versus unbounded task complexity comes in, right?
Exactly. Unbounded task complexity basically means there's no limit to how complex human work can get.
Yeah.
So even as AI gets more powerful, there will always be new, even more complex tasks for us to do.
So it's like a never-ending game of leapfrog. AI gets better, humans come up with something even more challenging, and so on.
Right. Now, bounded task complexity is a bit more, shall we say, unsettling.
Okay.
It suggests there is a limit to how complex human tasks can be.
Uh-huh.
So eventually, AI could theoretically automate everything.
Okay, that's where I start to sweat a little. But the paper doesn't just throw out these concepts and leave us hanging, right? They
Yeah.
actually explore what this might mean for the economy.
They do, and this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
They introduce this idea of two economic regions.
Okay.
In Region 1, which is basically the world we live in now, human labor is scarce relative to capital.
Right.
So our wages are higher than what you get just from investing your money, what economists call return on capital.
Makes sense. People are needed, so they have bargaining power. But what about Region 2? This is where AI gets good enough that humans aren't so scarce anymore, right?
Right. And here's the kicker. In Region 2, wages drop and become equal to the return on capital. Think of it like this. If a robot can do your job just as well as you, why would your employer pay you more than it costs to rent that robot?
Oof, that's a sobering thought. So the future of our paychecks basically depends on how quickly we transition from Region 1 to Region 2.
Right.
And that depends on the race between AI automation and how fast we invest in things like factories, robots, and yes, even more computing power.
You're getting it. They call this the race between automation and capital accumulation.
Okay.
And it plays out very differently depending on how fast AI develops.
Okay, so let's get to those scenarios. The paper models a few different possibilities.
Yes.
Starting with business as usual. What's that one all about?
It's kind of the steady as she goes scenario.
Okay.
AI keeps improving, but it automates a constant fraction of tasks each year.
Mm-hmm.
In this world, we never actually hit true AGI. There are always tasks left for humans. Output and wages grow at about 2% per year, similar to what we've seen over the past century.
So basically more of the same, just with AI gradually making things more efficient.
Pretty much. Now things get a lot more dramatic when they model the scenarios where AGI actually does arrive. They call these the baseline AGI and aggressive AGI scenarios.
So what's the difference? How long until the robots take over in each one?
In the baseline AGI scenario, full automation, meaning AI can do literally everything, is reached in 20 years. The aggressive AGI scenario is a lot more, well, aggressive.
Yeah.
It assumes full automation in just 5 years.
5 years? That's barely enough time to learn a new skill, let alone retrain for a whole new career. What happens to wages in those scenarios? That's got to be a wild ride.
It is. In both scenarios, output skyrockets. We're talking growth rates 10 times higher than the business as usual scenario. But here's the catch. Wages initially go UP, but then they crash hard before full automation is even reached. It's like a sugar rush followed by a major economic hangover.
Wait, why do they collapse before full automation? Shouldn't there still be some jobs left for humans at that point?
That's the thing. Remember how we talked about Region 2, where human labor isn't scarce anymore? Well, we can enter Region 2 even before every job is automated. As long as AI is good enough to handle most of the tasks, there are enough people around to do the remaining bits, so wages drop.
I see. So even if there are still tasks for humans, our wages could tank because we've essentially become expendable.
Exactly. It all comes down to that balance between labor and capital.
Right.
And once AI tips the scales, things can change very quickly.
Okay, so we've got business as usual, where AI progresses steadily,
Right.
and the baseline and aggressive AGI scenarios, where wages initially spike but then take a nosedive.
Yeah.
But they also model a scenario called bout of automation, right? What's that one all about?
This one's interesting. It captures what might happen if AI makes a sudden leap forward, automating a whole bunch of jobs very quickly.
Uh-huh.
But then things slow down because there's a long tail of tasks that are harder to automate. Think of it like a burst of progress followed by a period of consolidation.
So a technological sprint followed by a marathon.
Exactly. And the impact on wages is, well, pretty dramatic. They collapse initially, as you might expect when a lot of jobs suddenly disappear. But then here's the interesting part. They eventually recover as capital investment catches up. So it's a U-shaped pattern, a sharp drop, followed by a slow climb back up.
So even if we have a sudden automation shock, it doesn't necessarily mean we're doomed to low wages forever. It's all about whether investment can keep pace and make human labor scarce again.
That's the key takeaway here. It's not just about how fast AI automates tasks,
Right.
but also about how we respond as a society in terms of investing in new technologies, infrastructure, and education.
Yeah.
That's where the paper's next big idea comes into play. Fixed factors.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What are fixed factors and how do they shake things up?
Fixed factors are things like land,
Okay.
energy, and raw materials.
Yeah.
The stuff we need to build all those robots and factories in the first place,
Right.
they're called fixed because there's only so much of them on Earth.
Ah, so even if AI could automate every task imaginable,
Right.
we could still run into problems if we don't have enough physical resources to go around. That makes sense.
Exactly. And when you factor in these fixed factors, the outlook for wages gets a bit more complicated. Even if we assume unbounded task complexity, meaning AI never quite catches up with human ingenuity, the economy eventually enters region two
Mm-hmm.
as those fixed resources become bottlenecks.
I see.
Wages stagnate even if output continues to grow.
So it's like we hit a ceiling not because AI can't do the jobs,
Yeah.
but because we literally run out of the stuff we need to build the things that AI would help us create.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It really highlights the interconnectedness of the economy and the environment.
Right.
We can't just focus on automating tasks without thinking about the resources required to support that automation.
It's a reminder that the future isn't just about bits and bytes. It's also about atoms and molecules.
Precisely. And it raises some really interesting questions about sustainability in an AI-powered world.
Uh-huh.
Can we decouple economic growth from resource consumption?
Right.
Can we find new ways to use and recycle materials? These are the kinds of challenges we need to be grappling with right now.
Okay, so fixed factors throw a wrench into the works, even in the best case scenarios.
Right.
But the paper also explores this wild idea of AI actually automating innovation itself.
Yes.
What does that even look like?
Imagine AI helping us make scientific breakthroughs, design new materials, or invent entirely new technologies.
Yeah.
It's like turbocharging the process of discovery and invention.
Ooh, that's both exciting and a little scary. On the one hand, it could lead to incredible advances in medicine, energy, and all sorts of other fields. On the other hand, wouldn't it also accelerate the automation of even more jobs? What does the paper say about the impact on wages in this kind of scenario?
That's where things get really mind-bending. Automating innovation could lead to what they call a growth singularity, a situation where output increases so rapidly that everyone benefits,
Wow.
even if the share of that output going to labor shrinks.
Hold on, even if the robots are doing most of the work,
Right.
we could still be better off because the overall economic pie is growing so fast. How does that work?
It's a bit like a rising tide lifting all boats, even if some boats are a lot smaller than others.
Okay.
The idea is that the benefits of this explosive growth would be so vast that they would trickle down to everyone, even if wages aren't keeping pace with output.
Okay, I see the logic, but I'm still a bit skeptical.
Yeah.
It seems like this hinges on the assumption that the benefits of this growth singularity would be distributed fairly, which hasn't exactly been the trend lately.
That's a valid point. And the paper acknowledges
Yeah.
that it's not enough to just have explosive growth.
Right.
We also need to think about how those gains are shared.
Right.
It's about creating an economic system that's both dynamic and equitable.
Right, because even if everyone's income is technically rising,
Yeah.
the gap between the haves and have-nots could still widen dramatically.
Right.
It's like that scenario we discussed earlier with the heterogeneous worker skills.
Uh-huh.
The one where a small group of superstar workers with hard-to-automate skills end up earning huge salaries while everyone else struggles to keep up.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to have these conversations now before these technologies become even more powerful and entrenched. We need to be thinking about how to design policies and institutions that ensure everyone benefits from the AI revolution, not just a select few.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've talked about the race between automation and capital accumulation, the potential for both incredible growth and significant disruption,
Right.
the importance of considering fixed factors, and the distribution of benefits.
Right.
But there's one more concept from the paper I wanted to touch on: nostalgic jobs.
Okay.
What are those and why do they matter in this whole AI equation?
Nostalgic jobs are jobs that we as a society decide should stay human,
Yeah.
even if AI could technically perform them just as well or even better.
So it's like saying, hey, we might have robots that can teach our kids, but I still want a human teacher in the classroom.
Yes.
Or, sure, an AI could probably write a better legal brief, but I want a human judge presiding over my case.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that there are certain roles where we value the human element, the empathy, the creativity, the judgment that AI might struggle to replicate.
But isn't that just wishful thinking? Won't there always be pressure to automate these roles if it means lower costs and higher efficiency?
That's a fair point. But the paper suggests that having a sufficient volume of these nostalgic jobs could actually help keep human labor scarce and valuable, even in the face of widespread automation. It's about creating a space where human skills are still in demand, even as AI takes on more and more tasks.
So it's not just about what AI can do.
Right.
It's also about what we choose to let it do.
Yes.
It's about setting boundaries, about protecting those aspects of work and life that we deem uniquely human. I like that.
It's about agency. It's about recognizing that we have a choice in how we shape this future.
Right.
We're not just passive bystanders in the face of technological change.
That's a powerful message. But
Yeah.
let's be real, not all workers are created equal.
Right.
Some people have skills that are much harder to automate than others.
Yeah. How does the paper address this issue of inequality?
Well, they explore the impact of automation on workers with different skill levels, and the results are, well, a bit unsettling. Their model suggests that automation could lead to a situation where a small group of superstar workers, those with skills that are really hard to automate, earn huge wages, while most people see their wages stagnate or even collapse.
So it's like a winner-take-all economy, where the people at the very top benefit immensely from AI while everyone else is left fighting for scraps.
That's a potential concern, and it highlights the importance of thinking about how to distribute the benefits of AI more broadly.
Right.
One idea the paper explores is the concept of compute as specific capital.
Okay, I remember us touching on that earlier.
Yeah.
Can you remind me what that means and how it fits into this whole picture?
Remember how we talked about computing power being a bottleneck right now?
Yeah.
Well, the paper suggests that this scarcity could actually drive high returns for those who control computing resources in the short term. So it's like the early days of the internet, where companies like Google and Amazon made fortunes by controlling access to information.
That's a good analogy. But here's the twist.
Oh,
Over time, as we invest in more compute, those returns will fall,
okay.
and compute will become just another factor of production, like any other type of capital.
So the key is to make sure that access to compute and, by extension, the benefits of AI is democratized so that everyone can participate in this new economy,
Right.
not just a select few.
That's the idea. It's about ensuring that the tools that power this AI revolution are available to everyone, not just those who are already wealthy and powerful.
Expert speaker, this has been a seriously mind-blowing conversation.
It has.
I feel like we've just scratched the surface of a vast and incredibly complex topic.
I agree. It's a topic that demands our attention and careful consideration.
It feels like we're talking about a whole new economic paradigm here.
Yeah,
It's exciting,
it is.
but also a little daunting.
It is.
So much uncertainty about how this all plays out.
It's definitely uncharted territory.
Right.
And that's why it's so crucial to consider all these different angles.
Right.
The pace of automation, the role of fixed factors, the distribution of benefits,
Yeah.
and yes, even the idea of nostalgic jobs.
Right.
It's not just about predicting the future, it's about shaping it.
I'm curious, though, about what all this means for the average person.
Yeah.
If we are headed towards a world where AI can potentially do almost anything,
Ah,
how should we be thinking about our careers, our education, our lives?
that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Honestly, I don't think anyone has all the answers right now,
Yeah.
but this paper gives us some pretty solid food for thought.
So let's talk takeaways. What are some practical steps listeners can take, whether it's in their careers, their education, or
Sure.
even just their mindset to prepare for this AI-powered future?
First and foremost, be proactive.
Okay.
Don't wait for the robots to show up at your office before you start thinking about what's next.
Right.
Stay informed about what's happening in the world of AI and how it might impact your field.
So subscribe to some AI newsletters, read a few books, maybe even take a course or two, kind of like what we're doing here on the deep dive, just on a more personalized level.
Exactly. There are tons of resources out there,
Yeah.
many of them free.
Right.
The key is to be curious, stay engaged, and don't let yourself fall behind the curve.
And what about in terms of specific skills? Are there any areas that seem particularly resistant to automation, at least for now? You
Hmm.
know, the skills that might give you a little more job security in this brave new world?
That's a tough one
Yeah.
because the landscape is changing so rapidly.
Right.
But generally speaking, skills that involve a high degree of creativity, critical thinking,
Uh-huh.
complex problem solving, and emotional intelligence are going to be harder for AI to replicate.
So we're talking things like design, strategy, leadership, communication. Those are still in high demand.
They are. And I think they'll become even more important in an AI-powered world.
Right.
After all, someone needs to design these systems,
Yeah.
build them, manage them, make ethical decisions about how they're used.
It's like even if AI can write code, someone still needs to tell it what code to write
Right.
and what problems to solve.
Exactly.
We still need humans to set the goals, to provide the direction.
Absolutely. And,
Yeah.
and those goals, that direction, it all comes back to understanding human needs, values, and aspirations.
Right.
Those are things that AI is still a long way from mastering.
That's actually pretty reassuring. So it's not just about technical skills, it's about human skills.
It is.
It's about being able to think critically, to
Yes.
communicate effectively, to empathize with others.
Right?
Those are the things that make us uniquely human, and they'll be even more valuable in a world where AI can handle many of the routine tasks.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It's not about being replaced by machines. It's about learning to work alongside them, to leverage their strengths while still bringing our own unique human capabilities to the table.
Okay, that's a good pep talk.
Yeah.
But let's be realistic for a minute.
Okay.
This paper paints some pretty stark scenarios.
Yeah,
The potential for economic disruption is real.
it is.
What would you say to someone who's listening to this and feeling a little, well, terrified?
I'd say acknowledge your fear, but don't let it paralyze you.
Okay.
Use it as fuel to be proactive, to learn, to adapt.
Right.
Remember, we still have agency.
Yeah.
We still have the power to shape this future.
So how do we do that? How do we make sure that this AI-powered future is one that benefits everyone, not just a select few?
That's the challenge, isn't it? And it's one that requires a multifaceted approach.
Yeah.
It's about investing in education and training, about fostering innovation and entrepreneurship, about creating a more equitable and resilient economic system.
So it's about more than just individual actions. It's about collective action.
Yeah.
It's about making sure that our governments, our institutions are also prepared for this transformation.
Absolutely. It's a conversation that needs to happen at all levels of society.
Right.
We need our leaders, our policymakers, our educators, our business leaders,
Yeah.
everyone to be thinking about how we navigate this transition in a way that's both responsible and beneficial.
Okay. I'm feeling a little more empowered now.
Good.
It's a challenge, but it's not insurmountable.
Right.
We've faced technological disruptions before,
We have.
and we've always found a way to adapt.
We have.
And this time, we have the benefit of foresight.
Yes.
We can see these changes coming, and we have the opportunity to prepare, to adjust,
Yes.
to make sure that this next chapter in human history is one that we can all be proud of.
I agree.
Speaking of foresight, I'm reminded of another concept from the paper, the idea of compute as specific capital.
Hmm.
We talked about it earlier in terms of how it might impact wages and the distribution of wealth. But I'm wondering if there's a broader point here,
Uh-huh.
something about the nature of technology itself.
That's a great observation. And you're right. I think there is a deeper message here.
Okay.
When a new technology emerges, it's often scarce and expensive at first.
Right.
This gives the early adopters, the people who control access to that technology, a significant advantage.
Think of the printing press, the steam engine, the internet. All these technologies were revolutionary,
Yes.
but they also created new power dynamics, new winners and losers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But over time, as these technologies become more widespread,
Right.
as
Yeah.
production ramps up, the costs come down
Mm-hmm.
and the benefits become more widely distributed.
So what you're saying is that the same thing might happen with compute. Right now, it's a bottleneck, a
Yes.
source of potential inequality.
Right.
But as we invest in more of it,
Yes.
as it becomes more abundant,
Uh-huh.
it could actually become a force for democratization,
It could.
a way to level the playing field.
That's the hope, at least.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that technology in and of itself is neither good nor bad.
Right.
It's a tool.
It is.
And like any tool, it can be used for good or for ill. It all depends on who's wielding it and for what purpose.
Okay, so the message here is don't just fear the robots, figure out how to build them, control them,
Yes.
use them to create the future we want.
I like that. It's about taking ownership of our technological destiny.
Yeah.
It's about being active participants, not passive consumers.
I'm feeling inspired. But before we get too carried away with our newfound optimism,
Okay.
I have to ask, are there any potential downsides to this abundance of compute? Are there any risks we should be aware of?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's one that the paper doesn't explicitly address,
Right.
but I think it's worth pondering.
Okay.
When we have access to essentially unlimited computational power,
Mm-hmm.
what happens to our sense of limits,
Yeah.
our understanding of what's possible, even what it means to be human?
It's almost like we're entering a realm of science fiction here. The paper focused on the economic implications of AGI,
Right.
but you're raising some even deeper, more philosophical questions.
I think those questions are inseparable from the economic ones.
Oh.
Technology shapes our worldview, our values, our sense of self.
Yeah.
As we enter this era of abundant compute,
Right.
we need to be asking ourselves not just what we can do,
Yeah.
but what we should do.
Okay, so let's bring this back to our listeners. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
We've talked about the potential for both incredible progress and significant disruption,
Right.
the importance of fixed factors, the possibility of automating innovation,
Mm-hmm.
the role of compute, and even the philosophical implications of abundant computational power.
It's a lot.
It's a lot to digest.
It is, but I think it's essential to have these conversations now before these technologies become even more powerful and entrenched.
Right.
The more we understand the potential impacts,
Yeah.
the better prepared we'll be to navigate the challenges and harness the opportunities that lie ahead.
Expert speaker, this has been an absolutely incredible conversation.
It has been.
I feel like we've gone on a journey through the future of work, the economy, and even humanity itself, but you've given us a lot to think about,
I'm glad.
a lot to grapple with. And that, I think, is the point, isn't it? To get people thinking, to spark a conversation.
It is.
This paper isn't just about dry economic models. It's about grappling with some of the biggest questions facing humanity.
Absolutely. And that's what I love about this kind of research.
Yeah.
It's not just about predicting the future. It's about empowering us to shape it. It's about reminding us that we have agency, that we have choices to make.
So, listener, let's turn the conversation over to you. What resonated with you the most from our deep dive today? Are you feeling optimistic about the potential of AI?
Yeah.
Or are you more concerned about the risks? What are your thoughts on navigating this transition to an AI-powered world?
We'd love to hear your perspectives, share your thoughts in the comments.
Yeah.
And let's keep this conversation going because, as we've seen today, this is a topic that affects us all.
And until next time, happy diving.